try to tell them about it. I send them information, but they're just not interested. So I'm praying for them and hoping for the best.
Wonderful. Hey, Brother Harry.
Sometimes even a cult becomes a family.
We've seen some. The Branch Davidians, they were a cult with the guy, David Koresh out of Waco, Texas. We have Jim Jones. They were down in South America, Guyana. And there have been many other. Probably you've never heard of Father Divine. He was had a great following out of New York, that they thought that he was Jesus Christ, and that's oftentimes what they attempt to do. But then they always try to embrace it as a family. And my final question when it comes to family is, so you've defined family, American family. So how would you define a Christ-centered family? A Christ-centered family. You got a hand up right here.
Well, what a Christ-centered family should be is a father who is the head of the household, who leads by example and makes sure that he's making sure the rest of the family is going to church and being involved and, helping them to learn the scriptures with the loving wife who is, supporting him and being, the godly wife.
Okay. Good answer. Anything from anyone else? No wrong answers. We're sharing your experiences, and you're doing an excellent job. I would like to hear any other definition of Christ-centered family.
Again, going back to that, what I talked about before, we have members of our family where the wife is a Christian, the man's not, and it could be the other way around as well. And she is taking the children to church. She is doing this. It's that struggle between faith and no faith, and it can still be Christ-centered because you have the mother. I wasn't a Christian when my mother, when my wife met me, and I was a Christian when we married. But she was, she was introduced me to the church. So you have that situation where the grandparents again, or the aunt and uncle are raising these children, these families, having Christ at the center of the belief and raising those children in the nurture and admonition of our Lord is what's important. And not necessarily the relationships, it is important. You'd like to have a father and a mother and the head of the house, but it doesn't always work out that way. So it's having Christ as the standard.
Excellent. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When we have things like the church that binds, and we have people that bind, is that not kind of like a family or not?
Someone else? Anyone want to answer that? We have families or a church that bind, that come together, that binds. Is that not like a family? Some people saying yes. Some people got that deer in the headlight look like. Like church family, yeah. So I think Brother, who preached Wednesday night on our summer series, Decker, did an excellent job of going back to our schoolmaster, the Old Testament, to teach about how God told Abraham that he would be father of many people, beyond what the stars in the sky. You can count them. The grains of sand on the beach. A great nation. I don't think Abraham really understood that. But we are part of that binded family through who? Through Christ. So when it comes back down to it, we are going back to that Christ-centered family. Yes, there are families in the generic sense, and that is defined practically any way people want to define it. And we've seen that. It may be in America today, it could be just about anything. There's the American family that has certain ideals, mom, father, baseball and apple pie, the flag in the Bible. You put all those things together and we say, yep, that's American family. Well, they've never been to a Braves game, then they've never been to church, but it looks good on a TV, on a banner, on a fan or something. That's idealistic. It may not be real. But then we have the Christ-centered family. And that is going to be the focus of our discussion. It is different than the American family. It is different than the generic term for family. And again, why is that different? Why is that Christ-centered family, having Jesus as the focal point from which all other things happen in the family? Why is that important? And then we're going to dive into our lessons. We don't necessarily need the PowerPoint. We can still do what I want to get accomplished this morning. Why is that important? We very seldom get my good friend Andy. Andy had a multi-generational family. Very, very admirable to have that. And we don't see that much anymore, where you have the grandparents, the parents, and the young children all together in a Christ-centered family. And I know he's not gonna, if I put him on the spot, he's not gonna say anything. But I would like to get your feedback. What is it that you bring to your grandchildren to keep them understanding the importance of being Christ-centered, with Christ being the center of their life? I know they're involved in a lot of good things, but I know also the examples that you and Roxanne said.
I'll be real good. They're not here this morning.
Well, that typically doesn't happen, but he won't speak. But Andy has been a rock. I'll just put it that way. He's been a rock, he and Roxanne, for their family. I've seen those two young boys grow up when they were just a twinkle in their mother's eye. And I've watched how not only has their parents given them guidance and instruction, but they have also got an excellent guidance and instruction from their grandparents. They have been reared in the nurturing and the admonition of the Lord. That's what we mean by Christ-centered, so that it doesn't just become a one-generational thing or a two-generational thing or a three-generational thing, but it becomes generation after generation after generation after generation after generation, when they can look and say, I know you're Larry Fryer's great-great-grandson. And you know why? Because you are just like him. You are just like him. He was here as part of serving the church. He was great at doing missionary work. He was in Sri Lanka, but maybe you're in Missouri, or maybe you're in Cambodia. You are doing the thing just like Timothy was talked about from his mother Eunice and Lois. I know you by the things that you have done generationally. That's what we mean by Christ-centered. Tom is pointing at something. Oh. But that's what we mean by it. We've done that. See, I sort of had that memorized. But here's what we're going to do this morning is we're going to look at our overall objective. I'm looking back this way because I can't see it over there. Is that we're going to look at Christ, looking at his teachings to help strengthen family relationships. Have you ever experienced any schisms in our family or any separation in our families? Anybody ever experienced that? Anybody have a wayward child? Yeah, somebody has, yeah. You know, it doesn't mean you're not doing what you're supposed to do. It's because the devil is busy. He's trying to do things too to separate your children. We want to look at instilling Christian values, educating our family about Christ. We talked about raising children and grandchildren and protecting our family from immoral influences. Can anyone name a few immoral influences that we have today? What's that? Homosexuality. homosexuality. And again, always putting things in the context of being a Christ-centered family, we always want to distinguish between the sin and the sinner. God despises the act of sinning, the behavior. Yet God still loves the what? The sinner. We got a hand up back here.
TV or movies, just as general. I mean, like take Disney, for example. A few years ago, they started with just things happening in the background, and then it crept forward, and now you have characters in the movie itself, in cartoons, kids' cartoons that are homosexual, that are, things like that. And I mean, we cut Disney out, and explaining to our daughters, like, we're not going to Disney, we're not watching anything Disney, don't even mention Disney in the house. It's hard to do that because Disney used to be the safe place, and now you can't do it.
How true. Once I retired, I typically don't watch TV during the day, but you would be surprised to see what's on television at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, this probably should be R, sometimes X-rated. I'm like, is this what people watch? These soap operas are something else, I tell you. So our approach is we're going to have a guided discussion. We're doing that. We're going to look at some scriptural examples. And I put this third bullet up there so that we can, when we do bring forth some examples, and I'm going to do that, I just don't want to say things anecdotally. In other words, just throw something out there and assume it's the truth because generally people accept that. It may or may not be true. But we have some good data-driven things about the family that not only come from the church, but also come from other reliable institutions, can give us some insight on how the family is changing. And we are definitely, as we've done so far, drawing upon our real world experiences. So this morning, we're going to just go back and start looking at the family as it began. We're going to look at some scriptures and we're going to do some more discussions. And as you can see, all of these come from Genesis. It's just kicking things off so we can see that the family was not an accident. God had a purpose for the family to start with. God gave a command for it. God gave a mate for man. And then we are going to look at some of the first biblical families. Genesis 1:27 and 28. Very familiar passage. If anyone feels that they can see that and read that, or you can go to your own Bible. Would someone read those two passages for me? You can use this on the screen, or you can use whatever's in your version. We have a reader. Susan?
Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them.
Did I get the right one? Or did I list it wrong?
Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth."
Okay. Got some questions then. What does it mean to be fruitful and multiply? Have young'uns. Have babies, they say. Okay. Anything else?
Well, again, I think you're talking about the church families that reach out to do the thing that they do to multiply the church family.
That's right. That's not in a procreation sense, but is in a salvific sense, bringing salvation to each other. To be fruitful and multiply through procreation means that there are certain natural conditions that exist within the family. Not every American family can procreate. Why is that? This is an adult class for adult learning. We choose our words carefully to make sure we understand what is being said, and we're not here to insult anything linguistically or use embarrassing words. But why is it that not all American families can be fruitful and multiply and meet that command from a natural standpoint? Don't everybody answer all at once?
I think one reason might be that people around here have forgotten that children are gifts from God.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to view it in that way and pray together for the children that God might give them. I think that's been so forced out of our culture. They don't even think about that.
Okay. Anyone else? Tom?
Because of the way things have changed over time in our society, there are a lot of children being born out of wedlock and out of how God created the family structure. And when that happens, there isn't even instruction or guidance to go by. So there's families being, if you want to call them families, the families being created that are not in God's framework. So that's already strike one, and then it just goes downhill from there. So.
Great answers. Let me put it plainly. Sometimes we have to understand, no matter how much people love one another, they still can't be fruitful and multiply. Why is that? Because they lack what God created in the family as a man and a woman. That's what I was getting at. In order to be fruitful and multiply in a natural sense, there are some things that must be present. Now, I'm not talking about situations where one or the other spouse may have situations where they can't have children. You can still multiply through adoption. You can multiply by bringing your other children, nieces and nephews. I'm not talking about that. But I mean from the situation that two men, two women can't do this naturally. Naturally. It doesn't mean that we don't love them. That's the part of the Christ Center. But understanding that it brings another set of conditions to the family that is going to be problematic down the road. There's no way to avoid it. It's just not. What is the significance of seeing God's image when we see other people? We were made in the image of God. When God created us, male and female, we see we were made in the image of God. Why is that significant?
I think a lot of times we see that word image and we think, oh, okay, God looks like a human, he looks like us. But I don't think that's what that means. We have a soul. Mm-hmm. God didn't give that to any other creature that he made. Mm-hmm. And that is evident because only man is driven to want to worship a God. Mm-hmm. through the history. No other animal seeks to worship a God who made him. So we are in his image because we possess a soul which is part of him.
Good. The Latin for that word is image Dei. As she said, it is seeing God in a spiritual sense and not in a physical sense. But yet I also want us to recognize that even when we see families that are in place contrary to what the Bible tells us in the early creation of the family, two men, two women, or whatever the situation may be, that even they are made in God's image. It doesn't mean that they live according to God's standards. But since they are still made in God's image, and we're studying being a Christ-centered family, we as Christians still have the obligation to love them. That's what makes us different. If you have an untraditional family living next door to you and their car breaks down on the side of the road and you pass by, you don't stop driving, you don't keep going and say, well, sorry, I can't help you because you're not the family that I know. This is you. No, I'm not going to help you. You just got to deal with it. No, you help them. Why? Because you're Christ-centered is why you do it. In God's creation of human being, he has created them male and female. We've sort of hit on this a little bit, or at least I have. What can we draw from this? What can we draw from this? These are things that I know you guys have opinion on. You're being bashfully shy this morning. Yes.
It means a male and a female. That's the traditional family, a male and a female.
God created them. Now, God is omniscient. He knows all things. I'm sorry. That's what that word omniscient means. God is omnipotent. He's all powerful. Why do you think if God wanted to, couldn't he have made 3 iterations of people? Could he have made 4 iterations of people? I don't know what that would have looked like. 5 iterations of people? He could have. But look what he did. This was good. It was perfect. It was godly. It was purposeful. We may not understand it completely, but I guarantee you, Joe and his family, and some of you, even younger people, as you are raising your family as husband and wife, man and woman, you're seeing something as to the significance of this. And as our children grow up, they witness certain things and they will have certain questions. They will say, Mommy, she has 2 of these. Where is, why, Mommy? Christ-centered. It's a tough question to have if you're a parent these days in 2023. It's going to be even tougher in 2024 and 2025 as things like that proliferate. And we have to give them an age-appropriate answer. Meaning, don't break out the Bible and try to explain God's creation to them. Whatever makes it work for you. Any questions about these discussions here? This is just getting into the beginning of God's creation of the family. We're going to look at some more. Yes?
The problems that we have in the United States and in the world, the crime, the gangs, all of that comes about because of the breakdown of the family unit. These boys and girls that join these gangs, sometimes they join those gangs because that gang becomes their family. And that's not the way God intended it to be. If we would go back to the example that God has set for us, that would start clearing up all of these problems.
Thanks, Brother Ron. Got a hand in the back?
You may end up covering this later on, but we have some friends that are of that nature, and I've tried to study with them, and they've actually used 1 Samuel, David and Jonathan's relationship there. They've actually said that the bond that they had was more of a Jewish marriage, and their love was of a homosexual love. So basically what I'm trying to say is that people are using the Bible, twisting it to justify their sins. And that's what we have to be very aware that, like it says in there, Satan knows the Bible. And he, just like he did for Jesus when he tempted him, he'll twist it and he'll do whatever he can to get us to believe it.
Mm-hmm. I think that Brother Joe has his hand up over here, Brother Maroney.
I think that we need to remember one other thing in respect to what Ron said. I agree with what he said to a point. Let us remember that the angels rebelled against God, and there can be no greater surrounding of family than that. So there are just some people who have a screw loose that are mean, contrary, difficult to get along with, and create enormous amounts of problems because of that.
Great. I like the fact that you used that word rebellion. And if you have children, eventually you're going to experience some rebellion. That's just the way it works. And I don't mean rebellion in the most negative and adverse aspect of the word. By rebellion, I mean doing things that you know are not good for them and is counter to their well-being as human beings and as Christians. But let's look at what Jesus' brother, Jude, had to say about this subject. I'm going to bring it up because I think it's important that we understand about this. Somebody read for me Jude 5. I don't want to go that far. Yeah, Jude verse 6 through 7. Somebody read that.
And the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but let he had reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day, as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them in a similar manner to these, having given themselves over to sexual immorality and gone after strange flesh, are set forth as an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire.
You see, Jude makes it simple. Jude preaches about contending for the faith and not doing these things that we know are counter to what God has taught us. As Brother Joe said, even the angels that rebel, God had the place for them. He made it simple. And just like this place called Sodom and Gomorrah rebel, or like this angel coming down, then these men want to have unnatural relationships with them. Jude makes it plainly clear that there's going to be problems. And we're going to conclude with this final verse of Genesis, and we'll pick up next week. I really appreciate your discussion, and this will be our final verse we'll look at, and next week we'll pick up and finish off this introduction. If someone would read these 5 verses for me, and then we'll have a brief discussion afterwards, and that will conclude our lesson for this morning. Genesis 22, 20 through 25. We have a reader.
The man gave names to all cattle and to the birds of the air and to every animal of the field. But for the man there was not found a helper as his partner. So the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and he slept. Then he took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. Then the man said, "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one shall be called woman, for out of man this one was taken." Therefore a man leaves his father and his mother and clings to his wife, and they become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked, and they were not ashamed.
So we've looked at the family in the beginning, and then we're looking at how God creates the mate for the man. He's created them. He created them male and female. Now Moses gives this another more information for us. So here's some questions. Though God's other creation had partners, man did not. What does this tell us about God as he viewed man without a suitable mate. There were other animals in the field that had partners. Why didn't God create a dog for man? Would Fido have been suitable? What about a hamster or a parakeet? Not suitable. What this, again, all these other animals had partners, man did not, but God creates a suitable mate for man. Again, what does this tell us about our Creator? When it comes to this male-female relationship. That's how he wanted it. It was perfect for him. God does not create mess. God does not create junk. According to Scripture, woman comes from man, and they are one flesh. What does this mean for the institution of marriage and family? They need to be as one. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Let no man try to separate. They're one. I thought some hands up. Go ahead.
They knew that a man needed help to keep himself straight. So that's why.
That's always true. Dwayne, you speaking like a man from experience. That is true. There is no way that I would be standing up here in front of you in the condition that I am, spiritually, had not I had a wife. That's just all it is to it. I don't know what I would be doing. Maybe somewhere out there in the ditch. I don't know. But I wouldn't be spiritually in the same condition. What does it mean to leave and cleave? We're talking about the family. God created them. He told them, for this cause a man shall leave his mother and father and cleave unto who? His wife. What does it mean to leave and cleave? There's an expectation that God has, Brother Tom.
First, to define the word cleave, it's like when you take two, if you studied chemistry or anything like that, when you put two things together, sometimes they become something totally different. But it's one solution or one thing that was made from those two. So when cleaving together it cannot be taken apart.
Covalent bonding. Yeah.
So it's becoming that one flesh.
What else? That's the cleave part. What about the leave part? This could be a little difficult. I know we're running about a few minutes over, but what about the leave part? What does it mean to leave? We got the cleave part down. What it means to be about the leave. It means, yeah. Again, we're not talking about a blended family, multi-generational family. There's a need for that. What they mean about is you cannot be under mommy and daddy for the rest of your life when you become married. As we say, too many grown folks can't live in the same house. If you haven't figured that out yet, one day you will. Sometime it works, sometime it doesn't. Maybe we're on this floor and you're on that floor. But you know what? You don't run what happened up here and you don't run what happened down there. Yeah, you gotta do that. And mommy and daddy have to do that. It took my mother about 20 years to understand I've gone. I love you. And I'm cleaving to this woman right here. But I'm your mother. Mama, I love you. You will always be my mother, but this is my wife. Finally, in their nakedness, why were the man and the woman unashamed?
They didn't know. They didn't know they were naked.
One answer said they didn't know they were naked. I can understand where that comes from. They had no sin. The devil had not came to them. They were pure. They were innocent. It's just like that little baby who you're changing their diaper and you're in there, and the family is in the living room and in the den, and baby has made a boo-boo, and you take baby in there to put on him a clean diaper, and the baby said, look, I want to be with everybody, and as soon as you get that diaper off, you know what that little booger does? He takes off. I'm going in here with everybody else, naked as a jaybird. And he's like, what's the problem? He's pure. He's naked, and he's unashamed. He isn't doing anything wrong. Any questions? Thank you. We'll pick up next week.